Oi oi, my name is Toad, and welcome back to running the global stock of green stuff down to 0. Slightly shorter main video this week, due to me making like 4 other reference videos that will be coming out over the next few days, but hopefully should be okay. But to begin with, I will be using Gorillaput for this conversion. It's a 50-50 mix of green stuff and Milliput. It sometimes has trouble with adhesion, but just make sure it and the surfaces it's being applied to are dry first. I'm also putting this on the bodies of the Infernus Marines from the Leviathan box set, as I have some lying around. However, this should be able to work on any of your models. But I started by placing a ball of Gorillaput in a lubricated Ziploc bag, as it doesn't stick to them, as I've found, as long as it's lubricated. If not, they do stick quite badly. I then used my finger to press out a flat area before then cutting the sides off of the blob in order to create a rectangle, like so. I then cut a chevron out of the middle of the rectangle with my hobby knife. I picked up the sculpting medium and placed it on the body of the model. I cut this in half at the belt line, before then using my metal pointy tool thing to make it look like it's being held in place at the shoulder pad's belt, and that it was coming a bit loose around the gorget, like so. I brought back the lower half and placed it over the crotch of the marine, following the same steps around the belt. I then lubricated my fingers with water and carefully bent it into shape, so it was blowing in the right sort of direction with the wind that I wanted. I then left it to the side to dry. For the second style, I wanted to create something a bit more Dark Angels-y. I did this by flattening out a piece of sculpting medium, again, but I cut 2 smaller and thinner pieces off of the first big bit, and placed these over the front of the legs, before then pressing them into the belt and under the folds of the armour. I then took the rest of the medium, which I had cut into a large rectangle, and wrapped it around the back of the legs, so that it slightly overlapped the front 2 parts. I went around the waist of the model and cut away material around any pre-sculpted pouches and such. I followed this by pressing the material underneath, like with the belt. I also used the metal sculpting tool and put it under the material and pulled outwards gently in order to imply some gentle wind motion. Moving on to the third body, I felt that a toga would work well, so this could be good for, say, Minotaurs or Ultramarines. I cut the piece of Gorillaput to look like a soft trapezoid, and placed it over the left leg, repeating the steps of pressing it into the pre-sculpted pouches and belt like I did with the Dark Angels one. I repeated the step where I placed the metal poker underneath and pulling away, before lastly pressing some folds into where the material attaches to the belt. For the body, I placed another blob of Gorillaput over the left half of the torso, cut away the material around the armhole, as well as using the same tool to once again press some folds in carefully to imply that it's being held in place. Before moving on to the next one, which I went in with a more battle damage style, so I took the material, ripped it in half with my hands to create rips at the base of the tabard. I then repeated the steps in regards to the first tabard with attaching it to the crotch. I decided to go something a bit different on the torso, so I took 2 small bits of Gorillaput and placed them over the torso in a V shape, so the chest was somewhat visible. I then very simply pressed them into place in order to make them look as though they were attached by the belt and shoulders. Lastly, I took the Sergeant model. I followed the same steps of ripping the tabard as the last one, but for the torso I took a small blob of Gorillaput and pressed it over the stomach cavity of the model. Then I kind of sculpted in, made it look like it was closer to the Crusader Squad model that you can buy for the Black Templars. I wanted to do something a bit more special for the Sergeant, so I decided to give the robes a back area, like a Sword Brethren, and for this I made a cape. I did another big rectangle, ripped the bottom off to create battle damage. I then took my knife and cut a chevron out of the top in order to go around the backpack mount of the model. For attaching, I pinched the 2 sides of the chevron together and pressed them onto the back of the model. I then used my fingers to bend the cape around the model, placing some bends in order to create motion and make it look less flat. But with that, I had these 5 styles of robes for my models. Hopefully they can be applied to other models and would very easily be used on Chaos models to, say, make Fallen or Word Bearers. I hope to see you next time, where I'll be painting up one relic of a board game. Have a wonderful week. Ta-ra!